I'm Melody Gilbert with Howard Barbanel for Jewish World Update. Coming up tonight, we'll tell you what New York City is doing to keep the price of your Seder down. And we'll take you to the only kosher winery left in Manhattan. And you'll meet the director of a movie about some neo-Nazis in Michigan.
But first, a look at the news. In our top story tonight, a fishing boat loaded with explosives was destroyed off the coast of Lebanon by the Israeli Navy on Thursday. Israel radio reported that the sailors shot at the boat, which they at first thought was abandoned. There was a huge explosion resulting from the Israeli salvo. This was followed by shots fired at the Navy boat from PLO bunkers on the shorefront. The Israelis responded to the PLO gunfire. There were no casualties on the Israeli side. A 70-year-old Israeli man was stabbed in the back in eastern Jerusalem on Thursday. An Arab shopkeeper gave him first aid and called an ambulance that took him to the hospital. An unknown person pulled out the knife, and it was later found near the stabbing site. Police closed the gates of the old city and began hunting for suspects. 30 Arabs were arrested, and the street where the stabbing occurred is now on curfew. A 15-year-old Arab youth with 2 large knives taped to his chest was arrested in Jerusalem's Jewish Gilo neighborhood. After arrest, he confessed to authorities that he had intended to stab Jews with the knives. Israel's ambassador to Washington, Zalman Shoval, came back home to Israel Wednesday and reported on his recent talks with Secretary of State James Baker. America is seeking to bring Jordan back into the peace process and to involve it in discussions concerning the Palestinian Arabs. Baker proposed a joint Jordanian-Palestinian delegation to include Faisal al-Husseini as the head of the Palestinian Arab contingent to replace the discredited Yasser Arafat. The U.S. is now trying to draft Jordan back into the peace process. For the first time in 3 years, King Hussein of Jordan is visiting Syria. He was there to meet with Syria's President Hafez al-Assad. More details now in this report from Damascus.
King Hussein has some serious fence mending to do. Although both Jordan and Syria condemned the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, they split on support of the Allied war effort. Syria sent 19,000 troops to join the multinational force against Iraq, but Jordan denounced the war to liberate Kuwait. President Assad led a long line of Syrian government officials greeting the king and his entourage at Damascus airport. Assad may detest Saddam Hussein, but he understands the complex reasons why Jordan acted as it did. The king and Assad were to discuss economic cooperation between them and the Allied efforts to secure a lasting peace in the region. Syria is already supplying some oil to Jordan. Jordan is in deep trouble because Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states have halted their aid in cash and oil. The U.S. Senate last week voted to stop financial help for Jordan, and some European countries are considering similar measures.
The UN Security Council passed 2 resolutions this week that affect Israel. The first, a resolution that is highly critical of Israel's deportations of Palestinians. Israel's delegation to the UN says the resolution chose to ignore the violence that forced Israel to act this way. The second, a resolution that says Iraq must destroy all its ballistic missile systems and all the chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons it still possesses. No official reaction from the government, but Israeli citizens are pleased. Even though many of Iraq's weapons were destroyed in the Persian Gulf War, many still remain in the hands of troops loyal to Saddam Hussein. Now, in this report, we'll have more details about how the rebels are fighting back.
Kurdish rebels in action against Saddam's loyalist forces in northern Iraq. In Duhok province, near the border with Turkey, artillery is an important weapon in the rebel campaign to control northern Iraq, part of their homeland. The rebels say they've overrun the northern oil city of Kirkuk. The Allies can't confirm it. Western cameras also freely filmed these Kurdish rebel commanders at an outpost somewhere in Duhok. Although their Shiite rebel compatriots in southern Iraq are under siege, the Kurds are planning new offensives. They make up almost 20% of Iraq's 17 million people and want autonomy. They're increasingly well-equipped and armed, but they complain that the Western allies could and should do more to help them topple Saddam. The Kurds were undoubtedly in command of Zarko, a town on the northern border with Turkey. The euphoria and celebration preceded the triumphant return to Zarko from exile of the Kurdish rebel leader Jalal Talabani. He would tell them their fight would continue until the whole of Iraq is liberated, and he praised their victories over what he called the troops of the bloody dictatorship of Baghdad. Learning to use anti-aircraft guns is crucial for the Kurds. Iraqi helicopter gunships have been their enemy's most feared weapon, despite repeated American warnings to Iraq not to use any kind of aircraft against rebel forces. The Kurdish hatred of Saddam Hussein is manifested in many ways, among others using his portrait for serious target practice. Iraqi officials supervised the shooting of these scenes of damage to the governor's palace in Al-Amra, a city southeast of Baghdad, recaptured by Saddam loyalists from Shiite rebels. Saddam himself was meeting the new cabinet he appointed in an effort to head off domestic political dissent. Ex-Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz is now a deputy prime minister. The United States has rejected the cabinet reshuffle as meaningless.
In Kuwait, massive efforts are underway to get the hundreds of burning oil wells under control. How is the job getting done? More details in this report from Kuwait.
The oil gushers, which the government says must be capped as a priority, are still gushing, still giving off whatever poisonous gases they have. The proper equipment to seal them off has yet to arrive. But in the case of one or two of the smaller, less badly damaged ones, something has been done. Boots Hansen, who's leader of one of the companies fighting the oil disasters, today got some of his men round one of these with no more sophisticated tools than a wrench. He thought there might just be a chance of turning the valves and stopping the flow that way. The valve slowly closed a bit. The sledgehammer was used to tighten it further. The final turn of the screw, there was still a hiss, but by and large, the flow had stopped. It was a small, simple oil wellhead, but the danger is always there.
When they're not burning like that, thing catch on fire, and that's bad when you do that.
So one down and 500 to go?
About that.
Back at the yard, the oil clouds had come down, the arc lights were on, and firefighters from Wild Wells Control of Texas were at work, building the ungainly machines they'll use on the oil fields. They have to be protected not only from heat and gushing oil, but the possibility of oil reigniting and other dangers.
Probably the biggest fear anyone has is the unexploded mines and bombs. Nobody can really say for sure if they've all been cleared.
Back to news about Israel now. The Soviet Union is sending a diplomatic delegation to Israel for the first time since 1967. Israeli diplomats in Moscow claim that the Russians will resume full relations with Israel within 6 months. Officials in Jerusalem think the decision to resume relations with Israel came after President Bush said that any Soviet involvement in the peace process in the Middle East is conditioned with resuming full relations with Israel. A synagogue in Sydney, Australia was set on fire this week. This is the 7th time a synagogue was torched in Australia this year. Jewish leaders in that area say this is the largest anti-Semitic crusade ever to take place in that country. Well, coming up next, Jewish World Update will tell you how the troops in the Persian Gulf are celebrating Passover. And later on, you'll hear why Dr. Ruth thinks it's important to get together for Seders. Stay with us.
Featuring Mike Burston, Vladimir Feltzman, Lucas Voss, Hilda Harris, Lionel Hampton, Judy Kay, Alan King, Herbie Mann, Jackie Mason, Melba Moore, Jerry Mulligan, Tony Randall, Eleanor Risa, Topol, Ruth Westheimer, Carol Winsence, Yevgeny Yevtushenko, with members of the Brooklyn Philharmonic, the New Voices of Freedom, and the Lionel Hampton Band.
America's music salute to the people of Israel. Sunday, March 31st at 8 p.m. here on Shalom America.
Some fly the airline of Israel simply because we have the most non-stops, the world's best trained pilots, and an unparalleled on-time record. Some fly for other reasons as well.
Each year, many Jews are stunned when they go shopping for their Seders. The costs seem to go up. often mysteriously in the days just before the holiday. But this year could be different. Are you shopping for Passover food yet? Well, this year you probably won't feel the pinch in your wallet as much as previous years. That's because dozens of stores have taken the Passover Pledge, an agreement with New York's Department of Consumer Affairs not to raise prices, which often dramatically increase just before the holiday. Leslie Niederman, owner of Fisher Brothers and Leslie, says he's just doing what he thinks is right and tells his customers he's happy to comply.
They welcome the situation that we are going along with it. And I have explained to them that this was my idea many years ago. And all the years I refused to raise the prices, a lot of times taking, losses over the holidays sooner than raise prices. So I feel that this is the right way to do things.
All 34 stores that are participating in the Kosher Coalition have received a poster like this one, which says that they have taken the Passover Pledge, and that means they will not raise their prices. Customers are obviously pleased.
I'm delighted to hear it. I have so many friends who live out of town, and they know that shopping in Manhattan is expensive anyway. And when I tell them how the prices go up during Passover, they can't believe it. I'm just delighted that the prices aren't going up. I never understood why they did in the first place.
Last year, surveys by the Department of Consumer Affairs documented price increases of 5 to 10% for meat, fish, and poultry in the week before Passover. This year, it is hoped that the Kosher Coalition will protect consumers and lead to a reasonably priced Passover Seder for all.
Jewish troops still stationed in the Persian Gulf are also celebrating Passover this week. 2,000 gift packs containing matzahs, gefilte fish, and haggadahs, and kosher coffee have been sent to Jewish soldiers who can't be home for their family seders. The food was donated by various companies, including Manischewitz and Maxwell House, and distributed by the Jewish Welfare Board. Melody?
Howard, those soldiers in the Persian Gulf are lucky because they already had their Passover shopping done for them. Among the major purchases for any Seder table is kosher wine. So I decided to take a trip down to Schapiro's Winery on the Lower East Side. The Lower East Side has changed much over the years, but not Schapiro's Winery. Here you can buy kosher wine from Norman Schapiro, the third generation of his family to operate what he says is the only kosher winery left in any metropolitan city in the world. He says people shop at Schapiro's to recapture part of their youth.
Today, a lot of people don't get the real Yiddishkeit or the feeling of Judaism when they don't come down to the Lower East Side and get their Passover wine or they don't get their matzahs, and it's a tradition. It really is a tradition. It's the Jews that came here that remember coming here, their grandfathers, their great-grandfathers, everyone who I speak. Oh, I remember going to Schapiro's on the Lower East Side when their grandfathers took them here, or their great-grandfathers. They came with their fathers, and that's the tradition of Schapiro's. It's a part of the Jewish life in America.
Up until recently, anyone could come into Schapiro's, take one of their many empty bottles, and taste and mix their own wine that came out of those barrels. But not anymore. With Passover here, all the wine is in the bottles, ready to go. Everyone ready to drink Schapiro's wine, as they have for the past 91 years.
And now for more serious issues. Right-wing extremists are claiming that the kosher certification markings on food product labels are really a kosher tax to make rabbis rich. Flyers by the Ku Klux Klan and other right-wing organizations are claiming that the meaning of the labels are guarded secrets deliberately kept from non-Jews to trick them into paying a kosher tax. These anti-Semites want to boycott the items with the label. With me now is Dr. Michael Riff from the Anti-Defamation League. Dr. Riff, thank you for being here. Is there any truth to substantiate this kind of a charge?
None whatsoever.
Would you say that kosher certification on packaged goods will cost the general consumer extra money?
Not at all. In response to various inquiries, manufacturers such as General Foods and H.J. Heinz have calculated the cost, if they could calculate it at all, to a tiny portion of 1 cent.
What kind of consumer benefit would plain American grocery shoppers derive from a kosher certification on a product?
Assurances of purity and quality.
And is this the kind of thing that, that manufacturers are looking for? Are new manufacturers coming along and requesting certification?
Yeah, they find that it has its benefits not only with Jewish consumers who want to preserve dietary laws, but also non-Jews, Seventh-day Adventists, other fundamentalist groups, and the increasing Islamic population in the United States.
Now, what about the Coors Brewery? It's unusual. I think they're the first ones to put an OU on a can of beer. What were their motivations?
Well, initially they did it to break into the Northeast market where they were having some difficulties, where wholesalers were questioning the political affiliation of Coors, also wondering whether Coors as a Western brewer was sensitive to the kosher issue as such, but they found later that it had positive benefits, again, in the area of quality control and purity.
All right, Dr. Riff, thank you very much for being with us. And up next, scenes from a movie that will turn your face red. Stay with us.
It's not a dream. Eldon, Israel's largest car rental company, with rentals starting from $182 per week. For reservations and information, call 1-800-533-8778. That's 1-800-533-8778. Eldon, try us first. Call 1-800-533-8778.
A group of neo-Nazis meet in Michigan. They want to spread their message, so they're happy to let some cameras record their rituals and opinions at a weekend retreat. The result is a powerful documentary called Blood in the Face. Kevin Rafferty is one of the directors of that film, which recently played at Manhattan's Film Forum. And he's with me here in the studio today. Hi, Kevin. Thank you for being with us. Tell me about the title of this show. It's called Blood in the Face. What does that mean?
Well, it refers to a tenet of their religion, this Christian identity religion, which is their very own special religion that's shared by the Nazis and the KKK and some other groups, including the Posse Comitatus. They believe that they are the true Israelites referred to in the Bible, and that the Jews are imposters and never lived in Palestine, and that these white Anglo-Saxon people migrated to Northern Europe and then came to America to found a new Jerusalem. And the actual idea of the blood in the face refers to being able to blush or show blood in the face. And they consider that only pure white people, which according to them doesn't include Jews, have this ability to blush, hence this idea of being able to show blood in the face.
Let's take a look at the clip. We have somebody that actually says this on camera, right? Okay.
People that formed our country.
The fathers of our country.
The fathers of our country. They wouldn't even allow, if you weren't a Christian or a white man, you didn't hold office of any kind. This country was built by and for white people. Adam was the father of his race. They're only people that can blush, show blood in their face, is a white race of people. You might think a Jew is white, but my...
These people that are truly the Israelite nations, that's us. The man's name wasn't Adam, it was Adam, to show blood in the face.
You know, when I see a clip like that, it just reminds me of that expression, if it weren't so sad, it would be funny. I mean, I don't even know what to say to something like that. It
was a strange experience making this film. It was a little bit like Alice must have felt entering the Looking Glass world. I'm not sure what your question is, but...
well, it's not a question, it was just a reaction. It was just, and I saw the movie, I was floored. I mean, 99% of the time I was floored and or laughing. It was so laughable, and yet it's so sad. And there were people there that did take this very seriously, and there are people, obviously, out in the world that do.
We put the film together so that it would, almost like a Rorschach test, it would play according to how you see it. There's no narration. We let these people say what they have to say. And
how did you get them to open up to you?
Well, we were invited to this gathering. In your introduction, you said they were happy to have us there. I'm not sure they were also happy to have us there, but the head of this national gathering, Pastor Bob Miles,
That's what I was referring to.
invited us. He didn't invite the press, he invited us. And it came about actually because Michael Moore, who's since achieved fame as the director of the sensational documentary Roger and Me, which I was one of the cameramen, knew this former Grand Dragon of the Michigan KKK through his radio show that he had in Flint, Michigan, and acted as our advance man and introduced us to Pastor Bob, and that's how it came about. Michael did some of the interviews in the film as well. I think you have another clip where he shows up at the end.
Yeah, let's take a look at it. We're going to see 5 or...
We're going to see some members of the SS Action Group, a neo-Nazi outfit that operates out of Detroit, that were at this gathering. These are just some of the people that were there.
I'm in a small tool and die factory, making parts for the automobile industry.
I work with computers.
I work in a paper factory. Unemployed. I work in a record shop.
We're just common people, working class people, your everyday all-American people. And we have to experience the government-forced programs of race mixing and white genocide. And we've realized that the only thing we got to thank us for the position we're in is our white culture, and we're not going to let it be destroyed by any subhuman trash.
White power!
I have a mob out in Dearborn screaming that tomorrow if you guys are in the neighborhood.
Well, I've lived in Washington, D.C., and that's, you know, they don't even want to learn our language, the foreign people there. Yeah, sure.
Now, you don't look like a typical Nazi, you know? I mean, you know, the ones we're used to seeing in the movies and on TV.
Oh.
You know, I mean, you could be in a Coppertone commercial for...
I'm not just against Jewish people. It's also blacks. It's just all for white people. Well, white power.
Yeah.
Now, that was Michael Moore we just heard, right? Okay. What was this experience like for you personally? I mean, you're not Jewish, so what was it like?
It was, as I said before, it was a very strange experience, because on the one hand, these people were very polite and very normal, and they were like the person next door.
Yeah, they have picnics.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen a clip where these people happen to be wearing Nazi uniforms, but most of the people are just your basic, they look, and at first, until they start really talking, they seem like you're very bedrock, middle American, average kind of person. And it's not until you really start talking to them and hear what they have to say that you realize that something is quite unusual about these people that you're dealing with. So it was unreal in that sense.
And unusual is a
oh, sure, yeah.
good word. Any final thoughts?
Well, I'd just like to mention, aside from Michael Moore working on the film, a lot of people worked on it, but I want to mention my 2 co-directors, Ann Boland and James Ridgway. It was Jim's idea in the first place, and Jim has also written a book also called Blood in the Face, available through Thunder's Mouth Press, which is real good. Get it. And the film will be showing around the country in theaters starting in a couple weeks in San Francisco at the Roxy Theater.
Great. All right, well, we'll be looking for it, and it will come out on home video, too, for people who missed it when it was in New York.
Yep.
Okay. Kevin, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
We really do appreciate it. Stay with us, because next we're going to take you to a celebrity Seder, and Howard will take a look at how the local Jewish newspapers are covering the news. We'll be right back.
It is said that some people are able to receive highly accurate information of what's happening back in Israel directly from Israeli intelligence. But what about those of us who can't?
Local Jewish newspapers agree on one thing this week. They don't agree on what the top story should be. The Jewish press leads with the Bush administration's message to Israel to stop deporting Palestinian Arabs from and settlement of Soviet Jews in the administered territories. Yossi Ben Aharon of the Prime Minister's office regretted the U.S. position, saying that Israel resorts to deportations only after careful consideration of each case. Defense Minister Moshe Aaron said it is best that these people be placed outside the area where they can incite violence. The Forward reports on the Supreme Court's agreement to hear a new school prayer case this spring. The case was brought by a Rhode Island Jewish couple and the ACLU, contesting the constitutionality of religious invocations by clergy at graduations and other public school gatherings. The paper also reports on the upcoming crackdown by the Israeli government against Palestinian Arab violence in an effort to better protect its citizens. Meanwhile, the Jewish Week leads with the arrest of nearly 20 people at a New York rally to free Jonathan Pollard. Pollard was convicted in 1985 for divulging military secrets to Israel. Many Jewish leaders maintain that Pollard's life sentence is too severe. Inside the paper is a report on Monday's meeting between American Jewish leaders and Poland's President Lech Walesa. Walesa pledged to work in overturning 1975's UN Zionism is Racism resolution. When pressed on what he would do to combat anti-Semitism in Poland, a frustrated Walesa said, "If I could be a Jew, frankly, I would shout to the world that I'm proud to be from the chosen people." To that, one Jewish leader said, "You wouldn't want to. It's not easy being a Jew." "It's not easy to be a Pole either," Walesa retorted. Finally, the week also reports on the difficulty in reviving Jewish life in Russia because of the massive exodus of Soviet Jews to Israel and the U.S. In towns like Kharkov, over half the Jews have already gone to Israel. The Russian Jews also lack the tools and Jewish knowledge necessary to get the job done. Speaking of the exodus of Soviet Jewry, Passover commemorates the exodus of the entire Jewish people from Egypt over 3,300 years ago. With us is Rabbi Alan Schwartz of Manhattan's congregation Ohab Zedek with a commentary on the significance of the holiday.
This weekend, we began a celebration of freedom and peoplehood. And to this day, no other Jewish holiday brings family and friends together as the festival of Passover. It's interesting that while we routinely refer to this holiday as Passover, nowhere is the holiday referred to as such in the Torah, which calls it Chag HaMatzot, the festival of unleavened bread. Rav Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev explained this phenomenon as a function of God's love for Israel and Israel's love for God. God in the Torah refers to Chag HaMatzot, thereby praising the Israelites, who faithfully followed Moses into the barren desert with nothing more than the slightly baked dough in their sacks. We, on the other hand, refer to Passover, thereby praising God, who caused death to pass over our houses in the night before we left Egypt. Chag HaMatzot praises us, so God uses that term. Chag HaPesach, Passover, praises God, so we use that term. We praise each other, and this is the essence of love, to seek the good in the other. In the words of Solomon's Song of Songs, which is read on the last day of Passover this year, Ani l'dodi v'dodi li, I am for my beloved and my beloved for me. Passover helps us find God because we are surrounded with our best conduit to God, the people we love and are close to. It is no wonder, then, that the great repentance movements in the Bible, in which the Israelites moved closer to God in the days of Joshua, Chizkiyahu, Yoshiyahu, and Nehemiah, every one of these stories is punctuated with the observance of Passover. As we join with our family and friends this Passover, let us remember this message of love as we unite with family, with friends, and with God. A happy and healthy Passover for all.
As the rabbi just said, it's Passover, and it's time to celebrate with family and friends. But many celebrities don't have that opportunity. Well, they have to perform. After all, the show must go on. So, a star-studded group of Jewish members of the New York show business community were invited this week to a celebrity Seder. Among the guests were Topol, Henny Youngman, Dr. Ruth, and Marilyn Michaels. For them, this minion of the stars was a way of staying in touch with their heritage. despite their performance schedule.
Being a performer and being in show business, we were never able to be very religious because when you're in the theater, you perform on Friday night and Saturday afternoon. That's when you do matinees. So there was a little bit of a conflict there. However, the tradition, of course, of Yiddishkeit is a wonderful thing that we like to keep.
From my point of view, I would say whoever is lonely has an obligation, him or herself, to find a family to join. It's not just the family who has that obligation. It's the person who has to say, I don't have a place to go. Please, can I join you?
What are you doing here? Do you think this
What
is
am I
important?
doing? I'm here for the food.
The food.
I came here for the food. You want the truth? Then I see my friend, jealous Terry Stiller, and Ann Mirren, and all these people are friends of mine. So it's like a little get-together today.
Melody, I can't resist this. Take my Seder, please.
Your imitation of Henny Youngman.
Absolutely.
Listen, just so you know, also, all those celebrities were given a proper Seder kit so that when they went home...
Seder on the road.
Seder on the road, exactly. And all of you, hope you're having good Seders.
Absolutely. Have a very good Passover, everybody.
Thank you all for being with us. I'm Melody Gilbert. For Howard and myself, and all of us here at Shalom America, good night and shalom.
Shalom. Shalom. Shalom. Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom. Shalom.